What I'm going to talk about today is going to rattle a lot of cages. But this is the second part of a series. I'm actually going to do a three-part series. I'm going to finish it up next week. Last week, I began with Amalek, and I'm going to be talking about the war with Amalek, how it is actually written in the stars, written in the heavens. But that's going to be next week. If you look at Exodus 17, verse 16. Now, do you see this time clock up here on the screen? Do you see my little time clock right here that I got? Do you see all the gears inside? If there's a broken tooth, the clock ain't going to work. All right? Well, I'm going to be talking today about the coming war with Amalek, which is represented by Iran. It's like a vicious dog that goes after the elderly and the children. This refers to Amalek or Iran. Do you remember Haman, the story in the book of Esther? Haman was an Agagite. And 500 years earlier, Samuel was supposed to kill all of the Amalekites, and the king, was Agag. And he didn't. So 500 years later, here we have the book of Esther, and we have Haman, all right, who is an Agagite. He is a direct descendant of Agag the king. That's why God said they needed to do what they needed to do. But here, look at Exodus 17:16. It says, "For he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." It says the Lord will have war, which means the Lord who is the one who initiates the battle. The Lord is the one who initiates the battle, but here's the thing. Whenever there are wars on earth, it's because there's a war that's going on in heaven. Just like Moses' tabernacle was patterned after the one in the heavens, the wars we see going on here are because there's wars going on in the heavens. Now, it says it's going to happen in every generation. There will be an Amalek who wants to destroy Israel, which is why the Lord is always having war with Amalek. Well, I believe this generation's war with Amalek will occur the spring of 2024 through the spring of 2025, next year. And I'm going to tell you the reasons why. There's a couple of wars that haven't taken place yet. One of them is Isaiah 17. We're going to go over that. The other one is Psalm 83. Now, we know from Ecclesiastes 3:8, there's a time of what? And a time of peace. But if we think it's a time of peace, just like in Israel, they're going to be attacked and not realizing there's a war. Do you think they'd be doing that if they knew what was going to happen? No. This is why it is important that we know what is coming over the next couple of years that I'll be speaking about next week. As I said, there are prophetic wars that are still to take place. The Psalm 83 war, the Isaiah 17, and I believe there will be a final war with Amalek. It'll be the final one because then the Messiah returns. Then there's the Ezekiel 38 and the Zechariah 12 through 14. Now, if you look at your notes, Psalms 83, 1 through 5, this is one of the wars yet to take place. It says, "O God, don't keep quiet. Let your lips be open and take no rest, O God. And first look, those who make war on you are out of control. Your haters are lifting up their heads. They have made wise designs against your people, talking together against those whom you keep in a secret place." And look at what they've said. "Come, let us put an end to them as a nation so that the name of Israel may go out of man's memory. For they have all come to an agreement. They are all joined together against you." Now, I saw an article this last week where one of the Hamas leaders says our goal has been to eliminate Israel from the beginning. That is their goal. Now, look at the next verses. It says in Psalm 83, 6-8, these are the countries that want to wipe out Israel as a nation. The tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, those are the ones who came from Hagar, Gebal, Ammon, and who else? Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot. So here you go. Here are the nations that it's talking about. I have up on the chart, Edom, Ammon, Moab are all the nation of Jordan. Gebal and Tyre are Lebanon. Asher is Iraq. Philistines and Amalek are in Gaza. And the Hagarenes, Ishmaelites, is Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. Now, Isaiah 17 is another war that is coming. And look at it. It says, the burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it will be a ruinous heap. Here we go. Wasn't that fun? All right. Are we to know the times and seasons? Are we? Okay. If we know the time and the seasons, my question is, what time is it? What time is it? If we're supposed to know the times and seasons, well, here's the thing. What is the first question we should ask if we want to know the times and seasons? Is where? Where? There's all different times around the world. So one question is, if we want to know what time it is, we ask, well, where do you want to know what time it is? Well, I want to know what time it is on the prophetic time clock. Does that make sense? Well, here's the problem. This world is in its own time zone. We have all these time zones, all these gears are like different clocks, but this isn't the reality. Yes, it's the reality where we live, but the real question is, what time is it in the heavenly time clock? All right? And here I want you to understand when it says in Genesis 1:14, he made the sun and the moon for signs, and then seasons. It's not winter, spring, summer, fall. The Hebrew word is moedim, and it means for the appointed times. They have holy days, the weekly Shabbat, monthly the new moons, yearly all the festival years. When it says in Genesis 1:14, it's for days and months and years, it's referring to the new moons, the Shemitah year, the Jubilee year, not for the calendar that we are on here. And then, in addition to the yearly Moedim, we've got the 7th year, the Shemitah year, the 50th year, the Jubilee year. That's the calendar we need to be on. For example, a lot of people ask me, well, how come where are the missing 200 years on the Jewish calendar? Wrong question. Why have they added 200 years on the stupid Gregorian calendar? What's the real and what's the fake? This is the correct biblical year, 5784, from Adam. The discrepancies aren't with the biblical calendar, it's with our stupid Gregorian calendar. And I will show you that today. First off, the moon. The Islamic calendar is based only on the moon. That's the lunar calendar. Okay? Do you think God is using that calendar? No. Well, then we have the solar calendar. Here we go. This is only solar. Okay, this happens to be Iran's calendar. That's solar. Do you think God is using that calendar? Well, guess what? It's no different than ours except the dressing. We have a calendar that's based only on the sun, just like Iran. It's solar only. All right? Look at this. The Julian calendar. Did you know in the year 1582, the Catholics said we need to forget the Julian calendar and go to the Gregorian calendar. So in October, it went from Thursday the 4th to Friday the 15th. Wow, all of a sudden, this calendar, which we have the Gregorian calendar, they decided because everything was getting out of season, they had to correct it. Well, guess what? This is the Chinese calendar, which is a lunar solar calendar. So the one is only the moon. These bottom two were only the sun, but the Chinese calendar, even though it's lunar solar, that's not the one God is using to determine what happens prophetically. What is the common thing about all of these? They're man-made. That is the problem. Now, here we go. Beautiful picture of Noah. Look at Genesis 7:11. It says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. Let me show you the calendar we need to be on. It's called Anno Mundi, or AM, not BC, AD, or anything else. It's Anno Mundi, which means the year of the world. Anno is year, like annual. We get the word annual. Anno is, these are Latin, and Mundi refers to earth or the world. So this is Latin of what year is it since creation? That's what the Bible is. Now think about this for a minute. Genesis 7:11, God had already introduced a calendar. How would they know the second month? How would they know the seventh day of the month unless there was a calendar that was already in existence? And here we have it. It was in the year 1656 since creation, and it was on the 17th of Heshvan that Noah's flood took place. Now tell me, how in the world would anyone know that if there wasn't a calendar? Hello. Okay, so look at this. Here is year 1 AM of Adam and Eve. Now, I have this, but Seth was born when Adam was 130. This is what the Bible says. And then he gave birth to Enosh in the year 235. He begat Canaan, who begat Mahalalel, who begat Yared, who begat Enoch, and have the year of their birth on every single one of these little cakes. There's Methuselah, okay, Lamech, and there's Noah. Noah was born in the year 1056. Okay, then Shem was born. Here comes the flood. And he was 600 years old. So it was in the year 1656. And then 2 years after the flood in 1658, he has Arphaxad. Okay, and then from there, you got all these little kids being born until we get to Terah, who gives birth to Abraham. And what year is it? 1948, the same year as Israel becomes a nation, is when Abraham is born. Wow, wonder if that's a coincidence. He is 75 years old when he receives the covenant to the promised land, which is 2023. Okay, now this is fascinating because we're in the year 2023. We're seeing patterns is what we have to watch. Okay, so Abraham receives the covenant 2023. Here we go. There it is, 2023. So we go to the next slide. Here is Abraham. He receives the covenant in 2023. Exodus 12:41 says that Moses leaves Egypt 430 years since the promise was given to him in 2023. You add 2023 to 430, you get 2453 is when he leaves Egypt to enter the promised land. It's all in the Bible. And then in 1 Kings 6:1, it said it was 480 years to the day since the Exodus. So you can figure that out. And you know, this is a Shemitah year because it's divisible by 7. A Shemitah year is divisible by 7. When the temple was finished, they waited 1 year, it says in 1 Kings 8:2, to dedicate it. And then you can go on all the way down to the temple was destroyed in the year 3361. Okay? That's from Adam, A.M. Adam made. If we can't remember anything else, think of AM as Adam made. Okay, now, this is going to be interesting. Here we go. Here is the Middle East. We've got Moses' tabernacle and Solomon's temple there. And there's a verse that talked about how Solomon had a fleet of ships, okay, going everywhere. As a matter of fact, look at your notes in 1 Kings 9:26. King Solomon built a fleet of ships, okay, which is near Eilat, which is down right in here. There's Eilat down in there. And he had a fleet of ships. And it says Hiram sent with the fleet his servants, some seamen who were familiar with the sea, together with the servants of Solomon. Okay, well, Hiram, he's up in Lebanon. He's up there. All right, now look at 1 Kings 10:24 and 25. The whole earth sought the presence of Solomon. Okay, now the whole earth doesn't mean people from America, all right? But it's talking all about the Mediterranean. All of those people were going to Solomon. That's in 1 Kings 10, 24 and 25, to hear his wisdom that God put in his mind. And everyone is bringing all kinds of stuff. Now, in the year, first off, here is God's calendar. Year 0. Friday the 1st was the first day on the civil calendar. How do we know it was a Friday? Adam was created on the 6th day. Friday's the 6th day. That's Rosh Hashanah, Tishri 1. That's how we know that's when the calendar begins. And then we see Noah's flood in 1656. Abraham, in 2023, it was on the 14th of Nisan that he received the promise. And then we have in 2453, Moses begins the religious calendar, which is like 1308 BC, but it was 2453 since creation. And then Solomon's temple was in 2940 AM. On our calendar is like 821 BC. But guess what happens? Here we have this fine gentleman. Let me finish this, my notes here. In 2453, right here, 2453 is when God gave Moses a religious calendar. It doesn't do away with the civil calendar, just like we have January 1st, but we also have a school calendar. That doesn't do away with the other calendar. We have a calendar for taxes. Okay, there's all kinds of calendars, where there was in Judaism as well. But here's the thing. In 2453, God gives the religious calendar. We have the Aaronic priesthood is given to the people. And then around 2940, that is when Solomon has his temple, which is around 821. Well, guess what happens right after that? 70 years later, we have Romulus. And he decided to create the calendar that we're using today. Okay? And it was in 753 BC, and it was based totally upon the sun. Not a lunar solar calendar, but a solar calendar. Now, here's the deal about Romulus. He reigned until 716 BC, but he's the one who established the calendar that we're using. But guess what? He said there were only 10 months. All right? So, what do we have here? The 10 months were Martius, Aprilis, Maius, Junius, Quintilius, Sextilius, and then September is 7, right? October is 8th, November is the 9th, and December is is 10. And there were only 10 months. So watch what happens with our wonderful calendar. Now, tradition has it that Romulus named the first month Martius after his own father, the god of war, he believed, Mars. Now, as a matter of fact, I want to throw this in. 2 Samuel 11, verse 1 says, in the spring of the year is the time when the kings go to battle. Well, guess what? Next spring is going to be the time when the kings are going to go to battle. Aprilis in Latin, we get April from, means an opening, like the flowers are opening up. Maius refers to the goddess of fertility. Junius was the goddess of love and marriage. This is why people get married in June. Okay, this is where this comes from. So, what do we see? His next guy after him is Numa Pompilius in 715 BC. But he decided that there should be 12 months. And so he added January and February, but February was the last month of the year, not December. I'm just kind of showing you how things unfold. Well, here's the problem. First off, with our calendar, you just had like 40 years missing 2 months. You just lost over 6 years in our calendar by them deciding to add the 2 months they never had before. So our calendar's already 6 years off because they counted it for 40-some years as only 10 months. So what happens? Here we go. We have 3008 AM is 753 BC, and we have Romulus. Now comes Numa Pompilius in 715 BC, okay, is when he is, and he's making this change. But what does he do? He not only added January, February to the end of the year, Some say that, well, Numa Pompilius is also credited with the establishment of the Roman religion with their own version of a priesthood. Why? He was one of those men who went over on the ships to see Solomon. And he saw, well, they got a calendar. We want a calendar. Oh, they got a priesthood. We want a priesthood too. And so he created the Temple of Vesta, okay, in 715 BC. Here he started, he said, we need a religion, just like Solomon got. And so he creates a whole priesthood, including the Flamines, who were the high priests over 15 cults, these ladies. The Vestal Virgins, that's where this came from, who took care of the sacred flame in the Temple of Vesta. The Salii were the dancing, jumping priests of Mars. The Fetiales are the priests who acted as envoys to avoid wars. And then they created the pontiffs, clear back then. And it was led by Pontifex Maximus, who was responsible for the most important religious decisions, including war and all of this. Okay? So different people held the title of Pontifex Maximus. So what do we find here? Now, boom, here we have Pontifex Maximus Julius Caesar in 45 BCE. And he decided we need to create a Julian calendar because things were getting messed up. And of course, this was in the year 3716 AM. And he said, this is crazy. We need to change the calendar so January and February are at the beginning, not at the end. So he moved them around, okay? And that is how the number 8 became the number 10. The number 9 becomes 11. The 7th month, September, becomes the 9th month. See, that's how it got all screwed up. This is when. That's why the numbers don't match anymore. That's our great calendar. Now, what he decided, Julius Caesar says, oh my goodness, Rome started 708 years ago. So he decided that on our calendar, 45 BC, that it was really 708 AUC, which is Ab Urbe Condita, or the founding of Rome. So out of the blue, he says, okay, this first year of my kingdom is going to be the year 708 from when Rome was founded. And then he says, matter of fact, I'm going to get rid of Quintilius and call it July after me, Julius Caesar. And then comes Caesar Augustus in 3753, and he says, we're going to change Sextilis to August after me. So you're getting an idea of where our calendar is coming from. Okay, so Augustus Caesar, it was now in 745 AUC, which was 8 BC, but how many of you know the people back then didn't know it was 8 BC? Okay, all they knew is that it was 745 AUC. But all the Jewish people knew it was 3753 since Adam. Nothing's changed. Okay, so now what happens? Let's go to our little calendar here. Okay, you've already kind of seen this. This is 2933 is when Solomon began to build the temple. And 3361, as we saw, that's when the temple was destroyed. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Okay, over here, I have 3716, which was 45 BC, which was now 708 AUC, and that is when we have Romulus right in here. Right in here. It was in 753 BC. It was the year 3008. That's when Rome was founded by Romulus. So Rome was founded by Romulus. And then comes Numa Pompilius. Okay, and then down here is Julius Caesar. And then Caesar Augustus. Okay, and then what happens? In 3900 from Adam, which we call 140 AD, there's a rabbi, Halafta, and he announces, this is the year it's supposed to be from Adam, okay? Well, what happens? Of course, nobody likes the Jewish people. In 4044 after man, it's 284 AD on our calendar, but you know, well, let me tell you the next one. It's now the 1037th from the foundation of Rome. There's a new Roman emperor named Diocletian, And he says, forget all this, we're starting over. It's 1 AD after me, Agnus Diocletian. So everyone in the Roman Empire now knew it as the year 1. But it was 708 or 1037 from the founding of Rome. And so what happens? Okay, here's Diocletian, who hated everybody. He was one of the worst emperors in the world, one of the biggest anti-Semites. And so he starts the year Anno Diocletian. Well, what happens at the first council of Nicaea? Here we go. 325 AD. It's now the year 1078 from the founding of Rome. The year 4085 from Adam, but it's now 41st year of Anno Diocletian. Now, everyone's familiar with like Constantine around 325. Did you know everyone who lived in the year 325 did not know it was the year 325? It hadn't been created yet. The only AD was the year of Diocletian, not after the death or year of our Lord, Agnus Dei. So everyone in that day knew it as either the 1078th year of Rome, or they knew it as the 41st year of Anno Diocletian. They didn't know anything else. And so think when they made all these rulings around Constantine, they didn't know what year it was, other than the Roman year or the year of Diocletian. Well, so then what happens? In the year 532 AD, of course, they didn't know it was 532 AD, which was 4285 from the creation. We have another man named Dionysius, and he is in 247th year of Anno Diocletian. And he declares, here he is, there's a nice little picture of him. Of course, he's Catholic. And he decides we need to pick a year for the Lord's birth. So it wasn't until 532 AD that they came up with an Agnus Dei, year of our Lord. And he had no idea when Yeshua was born. He just, tried to figure it out. Okay, so then what happens? In the year 4491 from the birth of the Lord, which is now 731 AD, according to him, we have another man named Bede, and he decided, we need to create a BC. So he's the one who comes up with BC, and a nice little Catholic man. And that it wasn't until the year 731 that they even decided to come up with a BC, and he tried to figure out when was creation. Okay, and let me see. Yeah, at the first council of Nicaea in AD 325, they noticed the problem that the northern spring equinox was occurring well before the March 21st date, and this date was important to the Christian churches back in the year 300 because it is fundamental to the calculation for their date of Easter. They decided that Easter would always fall on a Sunday following the full moon that follows the spring equinox. That's how they came up with the date of Easter. And it wasn't until 200 years later, in 525, that it was a monk named Dionysius Exiguus who introduced the AD system. And then it wasn't even widely used, though, until the 9th century. And the addition of BC component happened 200 years after Dionysius, when the Venerable Bede of Northumbria, which is England and Scotland, published his History of the English People in 731. Bede's work not only brought the AD system to the attention of other scholars, they weren't even aware of an AD system in the 700s, but also expanded the system to include the years before AD. Okay, to Bede, though, he also was ignorant of the number 0, so the year that came before 1 AD was 1 BC, and there is no year 0 on either side. So they are missing 2 more years. Because 0 didn't exist back then. There was still a problem, though. The Julian year was too long by 11 minutes and 14 seconds. This may not seem like a lot, but after 1,000 years, it adds up to 1 day per every 100 years. And it was not until in the 16th century, the vernal equinox was falling around March 11th instead of March 21st. And so what happens? We have Pope Gregory, and he adds 11 days to the calendar. There's Pope Gregory. But the problem is, that was only for Catholics. All the Protestants thought this was a Catholic plot, so they ignored it. And during this time, Lightfoot, he decided that creation started in 3929. That's what he said. Creation was in 3929. Well, then what happens? Then we get Usher, who says, no, sir, it's in 4004. Well, okay. So then what happens? In 1752, the United States and the Brits finally accept the Gregorian calendar, and they add 12 days to the calendar. Okay? What do we notice about these? They're all man-made. That's our calendar. So here, the Julian calendar was in 1582. In October, it went from Thursday the 4th to Friday the 15th. Then, right there, Thursday the 4th, Friday the 15th, on the Gregorian calendar. Well, here now, King George says, okay, fine, we're going to add 12 days. And so, in 1752, Wednesday the 2nd was followed by Thursday the 14th. All right, so you can see that there. Julian to Gregorian. The Catholics did Julian to Gregorian in 1582, and they're, let me go back. And so, again, what is the problem with all of these? Okay, I'm skipping some things. How much time do I have? 15 minutes? I think I have 15 minutes. Okay, so Jeremiah 8:7 says, the stork in heaven knows her appointed times, and the turtle dove and the crane and the swallow observe their appointed times, but my people are clueless. They don't know which way to go. They don't know, do they go BC? Do they go AD? Well, why not just stick with the Bible and just go straight on? All right, here's the thing. Jeremiah 10:23. I know, O Lord, that the way of man is not in himself. It's not in the man who walks to direct his steps. Okay, we are clueless. We are all born with a broken compass, and we are all born with a broken watch. And so God has to direct our steps. So here's believers. We are lost in space. We are lost in time. We've lost our connection because we're on the wrong calendar. All right? Genesis 1:14. God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them, notice it's them, not just the sun, not just the moon, but them, and the number one reason is for what? Signs. The sun and the moon, eclipses are his signs in heaven. Who would know or care about eclipses using only a lunar calendar or only a solar calendar? We need to be on God's biblical calendar because that's the real one that has to do with eternity. Yes, our calendar is important to do business, but don't try to make the true calendar fit somewhere on the Gregorian calendar. We got to make the Gregorian calendar fit on the real calendar, if anything. So it's not like the Jewish calendar is missing years. No, the Gregorian calendar has it all screwed up. So coming back, we need to know what time it is. Now, if I ask what time is it, and we're supposed to know the times and seasons, how long is the time? Well, we know about the times of the Gentiles. Well, how long is that? We also know about a time, times, and a half a time, which is 3.5 years. But how can you know what time it is if you know how long a time is in the context? So let me help you. Think of morning and evening as a day. But that is not how it works. No, no, no. It's evening and morning is the first day. Now, so this is when the first day begins. The second day begins, evening and morning. Does everyone see that? Okay, so is 2024 in the 20th century or the 21st? It's in the 21st. As a matter of fact, you're 24 years into the 21st century. So is 150 AD in the first or second century? 150 is in the second century, okay? Because when do you become a year old? When you're born or after the first year? Okay, so if you're 1.5, you're halfway into the second century. Everyone has to get that. This is so important because there's the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. Do you notice when you turn 5, you've entered the sixth day or sixth year? As soon as you turn 5, because that's at the end. So the second day, you say you're 5 years old, but you're really 5 years in a day or 5 years and 6 months. Now, here's why this is important. Here we go. These are 1,000-year day now. When you turn 5, you've entered the sixth day, and the sixth day ends over there. Is everyone following me? Okay, you have to get this. This is going to be mind-blowing. Okay, so if we are in the year 5784 right now, right? We are 784 years into the sixth day. We're about to enter the seventh day. Is everyone following me? 5 means you hit 5. You're now in the sixth year. We are now 740 years into the sixth day. And if you remember, when did the Shabbat begin? Friday night. The seventh day doesn't begin at 7,000. It begins at sunset of the sixth day. So we are 784 years into the sixth day. The seventh day begins at sunset of the sixth day. Well, guess what? Based on a 24-hour day, halfway would be what? 12 hours, which would be noon. Does that make sense? Okay. And if you divide 24 by 4, you get 6, which means every 6 hours is a quarter. Therefore, if you're at 3/4 of the day, it would be 6 p.m. or 1800 military time. Is everyone following me? Well, you take 24 times the 0.784 that we're here, we are at 18.8 or 6:48 p.m. is where we're at on a sixth day, 24-hour clock. 6 p.m. is 1800. 7 p.m. is 1900. Does everyone understand that? Well, guess what? 5784 is 784, which we see is 648, which puts us right there at 7 p.m. Of the seventh day. Has it begun? Is it sunset yet of the sixth day? October 3rd of this next year, Tishri 1, sunset in Jerusalem is 6:20, so we've entered the seventh day now. Let me go back. Let me do it. Oh. So anyway, the seventh day, guys, has already begun. We are at sunset of the sixth day. We're entering the seventh day. We are in the seventh day. Now, concerning a Jubilee, Leviticus 25:8, you're to number 7 Sabbaths of years, right? 7 times 7 years. And the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be to you how many? What's 7 times 7? Okay, so God has us count 49-year blocks. So here is 1 through 7, and here is 1 through 7, which is 49. Okay, these are the Shemitah, these are the first year of a new Shemitah cycle. These are the Shemitah years. Okay, so there's your 7 by 7. It's a block of years. And the 49th year is always followed by what? The 50th year. Wow, look how math works. So here's what happens. They are 49-year blocks, and the Jubilee is always the first year of the next 49-year cycle. It's not a separate year. God did not say throw in a separate year. He just says the 50th year is the year of Jubilee. So the year of Jubilee is the first year after a block of 49. Now, some people would have you believe that 1917, 1967, and 2017 were all Jubilee years because they're 50 years apart. Well, I'll have you know that is impossible. I call it math. Here we are. Here is the first year of a Shemitah cycle. Here is the seventh year of a Shemitah cycle. And everyone knows this was a Shemitah year. 2014, 2015 was a Shemitah year. 2007, 2008 was a Shemitah year. How do we know? Well, if you take this year, 5740, and divide it by 7, you get 820. You know it's a Shemitah year because the Hebrew year is divisible by 7. And so the next one is 821. The next one is 822. What do you think the top one would be if I divide it by 7? Ta-da! 819. It's just math. They're all divisible by 7, and each 7 will move up. Now, Jubilee cycles, we saw, are 7 times 7 or 49 years, right? 49 years. How do we know? This is a 10-year Shemitah cycle. How do we know where the first year of a Shemitah cycle is? When is the Jubilee? Well, guess what? You take 5733, we know it's divisible by 7, but it's got to be divisible by 49. Well, guess what it is? It's 117. Therefore, 1973, which is when the Yom Kippur year was a Jubilee year. That's right, because it's every 49 years. The 50th year is always the first year of the next cycle. Okay, so it's like a pill box. You can't peel off one day. It comes in the whole section. Okay, so if that is the first year of a Jubilee year, that's the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one, the seventh one. So if that's the seventh, that means this is going to be what? A Jubilee year. And that's what it was. It was a Jubilee year. We can test it. Is this year, 5782, divisible by 49? Okay, it is. It's 118. Shazam. If you use math, you know when every Shemitah cycle is. You know where Jubilee years, and I have it clear back to creation. I just continued the AMs. Now, 2016 or 2017 cannot be a Jubilee year. Number one, God doesn't use 2017. He doesn't use the pagan calendar. Not only that, half of it is here and half of it is there. If you say 2017 is a Jubilee year, you got to ask, well, which one, the first half or the second half? Well, it's neither, because it's in the middle of a Shemitah cycle. It's impossible for 2017 to be a Jubilee year by using simple basic math. How could 2017 be a Jubilee year when it's in the middle of a Shemitah cycle? God doesn't use the Gregorian calendar year. He uses the Hebrew year. And the Jubilee has to start after a Shemitah year. And it's not after a Shemitah year. So I got 3 minutes. We have to hurry. Okay, so here, 1972 to 1973, we go by December 31st, January 1st, right? And so this is one long year, and then we have 1974, New Year's Eve. Everyone understanding that calendar. Well, guess what? 5732 to 5733 doesn't start on January 1st. Okay. It was September 8th, September 9th on our calendar, 26th, 27th, 16th, and 17th, but it's all Erev Rosh Hashanah. All of the Hebrew years start on Rosh Hashanah. So here is the year 5733. Here is the year 5734. And what do we find? 5733 is divisible by 7. So guess what? That's a Shemitah year. Oh my goodness, what else do we see? It's also divisible by 49. That means that's the 117th year of Jubilee. Amazing how that works. Okay. Leviticus 25, 9 and 10. You will sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month, and that is not July. Okay. On October 6th, you declared the year of Jubilee on Yom Kippur. That's the 10th day. Guess what happened on the very first day of the year of Jubilee? We had the Yom Kippur War. The Jubilee cycle began the very first day with the Yom Kippur War. So here we go. Now, this was the last Jubilee cycle from 73 to 2023, the 10th day of the 7th month on the Day of Atonement. They're to sound it. In 73, it happened to be a Shabbat when the very first day of the year of Jubilee was proclaimed. And so, first day, year of Jubilee, Tishrei 10, what do we have? The Yom Kippur War. Now, what happens? on the Shabbat again. And notice October 7th, it's like the very next day, even though it's 50 years later, and it's on a Shabbat again. The very last day, Shemini Atzeret Simchat Torah, the closing day of that year of Jubilee, we have a war that just started. It began on the very first day with the war. It ends on the very last day with the war, which means this Jubilee cycle was very significant. Now, going back, like I said, Jacob was born in the year of Jubilee, representing Israel, and he died in the year of Jubilee. And then again, God made the signs in the heavens, all right? And these are signs that can't be manipulated by false prophets. These are signs understood by every tribe, nation, and tongue. And he made them for signs, okay? And seasons, which is Moedim, which means divine appointments, holy days, Shemitah years, Jubilee years. Now, those of you that have read my book that I wrote, I knew about in 2008, as a matter of fact, there were these solar lunar eclipses that were nigh impossible to happen, and everyone was trying to figure out what they meant. And a lot of people decided they knew what it meant, and they said that this is what Mark Biltz meant, and it's not what I meant. I told everybody I have no clue. Okay, but I knew it had significance. Well, guess what? I've shrunk our Jubilee cycle. What do I know happened? 2014, 2015 were the solar lunar eclipses that happened exactly 7 years before the end of the Jubilee. The other Jubilee cycle, the solar lunar eclipses, happened exactly 7 years before it began. And so there was also the 1967 war. So next week, I'm going to tell you all about the signs in the heavens and what they mean. So I ran out of time. So we're going to go over this, but you can understand the Gregorian calendar is not the calendar if you're concerned with God. I talked about some of it last week I began it, and I'm going to end it next week.